You ever have one of those nights where you just know something isn't right? I'm talking about that gut feeling, like a pit in your stomach telling you to turn back, but you're too damn stubborn to listen. Well, that's exactly what happened to me when I decided to check out the old carnival on the edge of town. You see, this carnival wasn't just any carnival. It was the one everyone used to go to as kids, the place where memories were made, where I had my first kiss, where laughter echoed through the night air like a sweet melody. But it all changed one night when the place just shut down without warning. No one knew why. Some said it was cursed. Others claimed the owner went mad. Me? I didn't care. I was too busy growing up, leaving that part of my life behind, until last week. It was a Friday night, and I was hanging out with my buddies, Pete and Danny. We were throwing back beers at the local dive, talking about how boring our lives had gotten. Danny, always the joker, suddenly says, "Hey, why don't we do something wild for once? I heard the old carnival's still there, just rotting away. Let's go check it out." Now, I should have known better, but after a few beers, everything sounds like a great idea, right? So we piled into Pete's old pickup truck and headed out of town, towards the old highway that led to the carnival. The road was dark, and the trees on either side seemed to close in on us the further we drove. Pete kept the radio off, so it was just the sound of the tires crunching over gravel and the wind whistling through the cracked windows. It was enough to give anyone the creeps, but we laughed it off, not wanting to admit we were all a little spooked. When we finally pulled up to the carnival, the place was even worse than I imagined. The entrance gate was rusted, hanging on by a thread, and the sign that once lit up with bright colors was now barely legible. We got out of the truck, and I swear the air felt different, heavier somehow. Danny cracked another joke, trying to lighten the mood, but even he couldn't hide the unease in his voice. "Man, this place is a dump," Pete said, kicking at some weeds growing through the cracks in the pavement. "You sure you want to go in?" Danny shrugged. "What's the worst that could happen? We'll just take a quick look around, snap some pics, and get out of here. No big deal." I didn't say much, just nodded and followed them through the gate. As soon as we stepped inside, the temperature seemed to drop. I zipped up my jacket, wishing I'd brought something warmer. The carnival was quiet, too quiet. The only sounds were the creaking of old rides in the wind and the distant call of an owl. We wandered around, taking in the sight of the broken-down rides and faded attractions. The Ferris wheel stood tall, but it wasn't moving, just looming over us like some giant metal skeleton. The merry-go-round, which used to be my favorite, was missing half its horses, and the ones that were left had their paint peeling off, revealing the bare wood underneath. The whole place was a graveyard of memories, and it was starting to freak me out. "Let's head to the funhouse," Danny suggested, pointing to the rundown building at the far end of the carnival. "Bet it's creepy as hell in there." I didn't like the sound of that, but I wasn't about to chicken out. We made our way over, dodging rusted metal and broken glass. The funhouse looked like it hadn't been touched in years. The door was slightly ajar, and a sign above it, once bright and colorful, now just read "Funhouse" in dull, faded letters. Pete pushed the door open with a loud creak, and we stepped inside. The air was musty, and it smelled like mold and decay. I had to squint to see in the dim light, but I could make out the mirrors lining the walls, all warped and cracked. "Man, this place is straight out of a horror movie," Pete muttered, shining his flashlight around. The beam of light bounced off the mirrors, creating eerie reflections that seemed to dance around us. We walked further into the funhouse, the floor creaking under our weight. Every step we took echoed, making it sound like someone was following us. I kept glancing over my shoulder, but there was nothing there, just shadows and silence. Then something caught my eye. One of the mirrors on the far wall was different. It wasn't cracked or dirty like the others. It was perfectly clear, like it had just been polished. I stopped in front of it, staring at my reflection, but something was off. The reflection looked just like me, but the expression on my face was wrong. The eyes were too wide, the smile too twisted. I backed away, feeling a chill run down my spine. "Guys, I don't think we should be here," I said, my voice shaking. Danny laughed, but it sounded forced. Relax, man. It's just a mirror. No, I'm serious. This place is messed up. We need to leave. Pete glanced at me, his face pale. Yeah, maybe he's right. This place is giving me the creeps. But before we could turn to leave, the door slammed shut behind us with a loud bang. The sound echoed through the funhouse, making us all jump. Pete ran over to the door and yanked on it, but it wouldn't budge. "It's stuck," he yelled, panic creeping into his voice. "Maybe it's just the wind," Danny suggested, but even he didn't sound convinced. I wasn't waiting around to find out. "Let's get out of here. There's gotta be another exit." We started moving through the funhouse, trying to find a way out. But the more we walked, the more it felt like the place was twisting and turning, leading us in circles. Every hallway looked the same, every mirror showing those warped reflections. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, fear gripping me tighter with every step. Then we heard it. A faint sound, almost like a giggle. It was soft at first, barely audible, but it grew louder, echoing through the funhouse. It sounded like a child's laughter, but there was something wrong about it, something sinister. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, my throat dry. Pete nodded, his eyes wide with fear. "What the hell is that?" We huddled together, our backs against the wall, trying to make sense of what was happening. The laughter continued, getting closer and closer, until it felt like it was right next to us. I was about to bolt when I saw something in one of the mirrors, a shadow just out of the corner of my eye. I turned to look, and there it was, a figure standing in the reflection. It was a little girl, dressed in old-fashioned clothes, her hair in pigtails. But her face was twisted into a grotesque smile, her eyes wide and empty. She wasn't there when I turned to look behind me, only in the mirror. "Oh my God," Danny gasped. "Do you see that?" We all stared at the mirror, our breath caught in our throats. The girl didn't move, just stood there, grinning at us. And then she spoke. Her voice was soft, like a whisper, but it sent chills down my spine. "Wanna play?" That was it. We weren't sticking around to find out what she meant. We took off running, not caring where we were going as long as it was away from that mirror. The hallways seemed to stretch on forever, twisting and turning like a maze. The laughter followed us, growing louder and more maniacal with every step. I was starting to think we'd never find a way out when I spotted a door at the end of the hallway. I sprinted towards it, the others right behind me. I grabbed the handle and shoved it open, and we tumbled out into the night air. We were outside. Finally, I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart. But when I looked around, I realized we weren't in the same place we entered. The carnival looked different, darker. The rides that were once still and broken were now lit up, lights flickering, but no music played. The Ferris wheel creaked as it turned slowly, and the merry-go-round spun in slow, eerie circles. "Where the hell are we?" Pete asked, his voice trembling. "I don't know," I admitted, fear tightening its grip on me again. And then I saw them, figures moving in the shadows. At first, I thought they were other people, maybe more idiots like us who had decided to explore the carnival. But as they stepped into the dim light, I realized they weren't people at all. They were clowns. Creepy, old-fashioned clowns with painted faces and tattered costumes. Their eyes were hollow, black pits, and their grins stretched impossibly wide. They moved slowly, almost mechanically, like puppets on strings. "Run," I whispered, but my voice was barely audible over the sound of my pounding heart. "We need to get out of here." We started backing away, but the clowns kept coming, closing in on us from all sides. Their laughter joined the echoes of the child's giggle, a cacophony of twisted sounds that made my blood run cold. The lights of the carnival flickered above us, casting eerie shadows as the clowns drew closer, their movements jerky and unnatural, like something out of a nightmare. "Danny, what the hell do we do?" Pete's voice was barely more than a whisper, but it was filled with raw panic. "I don't know, man. Just keep moving. We have to find a way out of here," Danny replied, his voice cracking as he tried to sound braver than he felt. We turned and ran, our footsteps pounding against the cracked pavement as we darted through the abandoned carnival. The sounds of our ragged breathing mixed with the relentless laughter that seemed to follow us no matter how fast we moved. I could feel the clowns' presence behind us, their grinning faces getting closer with every step. We passed by the old roller coaster, its tracks rusted and twisted, looking more like a skeletal hand reaching out from the darkness. The sight of it sent a shiver down my spine, and I pushed myself to run faster, even though my legs were burning and my lungs felt like they might explode. "This way," Pete shouted, pointing to a gap between two tents up ahead. We veered towards it, hoping it might lead us back to the entrance, or at least somewhere safer than where we were now. But as we turned the corner, we skidded to a halt. The gap between the tents didn't lead to safety. It led to more chaos. The path ahead was blocked by a towering figure, dressed in a ringmaster's outfit. His top hat tilted at an angle and his eyes hidden in shadow. His smile was the worst of all, wide and menacing, revealing rows of sharp, yellowed teeth. Well, what do we have here?" the ringmaster purred, his voice smooth yet filled with a terrifying undercurrent of malice. "You three seem lost. How about I show you the way to eternal fun?" I felt my stomach drop, and I realized with a sickening certainty that we weren't getting out of here. Not alive, at least. "No, we're leaving," I shouted, trying to sound more confident than I felt. I glanced at Danny and Pete, their faces pale with fear, but their eyes showed they were just as determined as I was to escape this nightmare. The ringmaster chuckled, a low, sinister sound that seemed to vibrate through the ground beneath our feet. "Leaving? Oh, my dear guests, no one leaves the carnival. Not until the show is over." He snapped his fingers, and suddenly, the tents around us began to move. The fabric rippled and swayed as if alive, closing in on us like the walls of a tightening trap. The laughter grew louder, more frantic, as the clowns emerged from the shadows, their grinning faces distorted by the flickering lights. "Run!" I screamed, pushing Danny and Pete ahead of me as we tried to find any way out, any crack in the carnival's twisted design that would let us escape. We sprinted back the way we came, dodging the clowns as they lunged at us, their hands clawing at the air, trying to grab hold of us. The ringmaster's laughter echoed through the night, a dark melody that seemed to be everywhere at once, surrounding us, choking us with fear. We burst out into the open again, but it was different this time. The carnival had changed, twisting itself into a new nightmare. The rides were spinning wildly, lights flashing in manic patterns, and the once fun attractions were now grotesque parodies of themselves. The Ferris wheel creaked and groaned as it spun faster and faster, the seats empty but moving as if filled with invisible passengers. The merry-go-round's horses, once beautiful and brightly colored, were now twisted into nightmarish shapes, their eyes hollow and their mouths open in silent screams. "This way," Pete yelled, pointing towards the old ticket booth at the edge of the carnival grounds. It looked like it was in better shape than the rest of the place, as if it had been untouched by the decay that had consumed everything else. We ran towards it, desperation driving us forward. But as we got closer, I noticed something strange. The booth was empty, but there was something written on the glass in what looked like blood. The words were shaky, like they'd been scrawled in a hurry, but I could make them out. "The laughter never stops." "What the hell does that mean?" Danny muttered, his voice trembling. "I don't know, but I'm not sticking around to find out," I replied, grabbing his arm and pulling him away from the booth. We had to keep moving. We couldn't afford to stop, not with the clowns and the ringmaster still hunting us. We bolted past the booth, heading for what looked like a service gate on the other side of the grounds. It was rusted and old, but it was slightly ajar, offering a sliver of hope that we might actually escape. As we got closer, I could feel the ground beneath us starting to shake. The entire carnival was coming alive, the rides spinning out of control, the lights flickering like they were about to explode. The air was filled with the deafening roar of machinery and the haunting echoes of laughter, all blending together into a cacophony of terror. We reached the gate, and Pete shoved it open with all his strength. The metal groaned in protest, but it moved just enough for us to squeeze through. We stumbled out onto the other side, panting and drenched in sweat. But we didn't stop running until we were far enough away that the sounds of the carnival were just a distant murmur. When we finally stopped, we collapsed onto the ground, gasping for breath. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might burst out of my chest. I glanced back at the carnival, now just a shadow on the horizon, and I shivered. "We made it," Danny whispered, his voice barely audible. "Yeah," Pete agreed, though he didn't sound convinced. But what the hell was that? What happened back there? I didn't have an answer. All I knew was that we had narrowly escaped something far worse than death. Something that had been waiting for us, biding its time until we were foolish enough to wander in. As we sat there, trying to make sense of it all, I couldn't shake the feeling that we hadn't really escaped. That something had followed us out of that carnival. Something dark and twisted that was now a part of us. And then, in the silence of the night, I heard it again. A faint giggle echoing in the back of my mind, like a memory that refused to fade. The laughter never stops,